What's up, everybody? Welcome to GoJo and Golic. Mike Golic Jr., Mike Golic Sr., Jesse Cofield holding it down for us in the DraftKings studio in Boston. Great show for you guys coming up today. The divisional round in the NFL was giving. A lot of great stuff to get to there. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKingsNetwork.com, the YouTube channel, Samsung TV, plus Roku, and more. We will get to wall-to-wall everything that happened over the weekend, including me and Dad being at the San Francisco 49ers and Green Bay Packers game that Dad was calling. A quick thank you to everybody who might have checked out the live stream that we did last night during the Chiefs-Bills game as well. Shout out to Hank and Brandon and everyone that helped make that happen on our end. Was a ton of fun. Had a ton of fun guests come by on that one, and got to talk once again about my father's glowing bathing habits in that one, which I'm sure, Dad, you were happy to have thrust back into the public light.
Yeah, your mother after that said, "Can we go a week without talking about your bathing habits? Is it possible?" And I said, "Listen, I don't know. It comes up. I don't shy away from it. You know what? I have no problem with it, so I stand by it." Dominic Foxworth really seemed to be turned off by that. He really seemed to have a problem with that.
Well, have you ever considered running your own bath, or is that just not?
No.
Okay.
No. It's much better to just go in. There's a bath already there, and I just step into it.
Yep.
Kind of lazy. Not gonna lie. Kind of lazy.
It's the if it ain't broke, don't fix it school of bathing there. Yeah. If you want to learn about what that's all about, you can go check out the live stream that's still available on our YouTube. But if you want to find out about how the Kansas City Chiefs went ahead and did it, well, right here, right now, we'll get to all the games. The championship games are now set in the NFC. We're going to have the Detroit Lions traveling to San Francisco for the NFC Championship game. And in the AFC, Kansas City heads to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Because last night, Dad, Patrick Mahomes went ahead and did it. He fulfilled the prophecy. He played in his first road playoff game and subsequently won his first road playoff game. The Chiefs got a big-time win on the road, 27-24. And for it to come down to wide right in Buffalo, of all places, in this game, Dad, I had no dog in this fight. I got asked by someone before the game, who we're rooting for. And I said, I really, truly have no way I lean one way or the other. I picked the Bills, but there's so much to like about both these teams. But to watch it happen in that excruciating fashion, if you're anyone outside of the Kansas City fan base footprint, you've got to feel a little bit for the way Buffalo fans had to go through that.
Yeah, for anybody that may not know the comparison of wide right, you go back to January of 91, Super Bowl 25, Buffalo against the Giants. Scott Norwood on a 47-yard field goal to win the Super Bowl is wide right. Misses it, Giants win the Super Bowl, and that was unfortunately a miss that has lived on through the decades of such a tough time for the Bills, who could get to a Super Bowl but never get over the hump. And in this one, this one was going to tie for Tyler Bass, with a minute 47 left to tie the game up, which the first thing I thought of when they were going to kick the field goal was, well, go ahead and make it, but Mahomes has a minute 47. So, it took him 13 seconds a couple of years ago. What do you think he's going to do in a minute 47? But still, it would have been a nice thing to watch to do. But Tyler Bass misses badly on, a 44-yarder, I think. Pushed it wide right. And, it's a shame. But while people are going to look at Tyler Bass and the kicker, and he took responsibility for it, as is most cases, and players understand this, it's not down to one play. There are other opportunities during a game, and there were for the Buffalo Bills. A game in which, Buffalo scored on its first 4 of its 5 possessions, Kansas City its first 5 of its 6 possessions, and then after, with 14 minutes left in the game, nobody can score, right? Yep. That's it. I mean, Pacheco gets that touchdown in the beginning of the fourth quarter, and the scoring's done.
Yeah, it was for a while like a heavyweight fight where everyone was just going back and forth with their best shot. And it ended up not being enough. So, Dad, you said it right, and Josh Allen said it after the game as well. No one play wins or loses the game, came to the defense of his teammate. But in your mind, what did this come down to? Because I thought it was interesting the styles that made the fight in this game. We talked so much about Kansas City's lack of ability to muster up big plays for the majority of the season, and that ended up being a huge part of the difference of this game. Kansas City finished with 8 plays of 20-plus yards in this game to Buffalo's 0. They had 0 in this game. Josh Allen has now started 104 games regular season and postseason. And last night was just the 4th game of his career where he didn't produce a single play of 20 or more yards in the game. So what in your mind was the difference if it wasn't that right there?
Well, I mean, I think you look at that because you have a lead change 5 times, right? So it's a very close game. So what's going to separate? Turnovers. You basically had 1 each when Buffalo tried the fake punt, right, in their own territory and didn't make it. And because Kansas City had 10 guys on the field, whether they went in with the fake punt or checked to it because of that, I don't know. But they didn't make it. But then Kansas City kind of gives it right back, on the old fumble out of the back of the end zone situation. So really there was no blood there. So what's going to separate? You're waiting for a big play. What's the turning point here? And, you mentioned it. 8 plays of 20-plus yards for Kansas City and none for Buffalo. None. I mean, this game was so evenly split, Mike. The Buffalo throws it 39 times. They run it 39 times. Kansas City throws it 23 times and runs it 24 times. They had so many less plays than Buffalo, but they were more efficient with their plays. It was kind of like the game I did in San Francisco, where Green Bay was running more plays than San Francisco, but San Francisco was becoming more efficient with them. And that's what Kansas City was. They were more efficient with their plays because Buffalo had their chances. The missed touchdown throw from Josh Allen to Khalil Shakir. I mean, everybody's talking about Chris Jones pushing the lineman into him so he couldn't fall through. Josh Allen's got a strong enough arm to make that throw. I'm not going to put it on that. I think he could have got it there. He didn't get it there. So I thought he could have.
You're not going to, while the rest of the world wants to give a defensive lineman credit for impacting the game in a way that's not just a sack by saying the pressure applied there, basically putting Deion Dawkins into Josh Allen's lap, you are going to be the one that robs credit from the D lineman. I just want to make sure I'm hearing that right because I was going to get ready to get up here and wax poetic about what an important play that was from Chris Jones, who's found a way in the last few years especially to step up in the postseason. You're telling me he gets no credit for that?
No, he certainly gets credit for it. But I'm saying Josh Allen has a strong enough arm, even if somebody is getting pushed into this was to his left side, not straight at him, that he has a strong enough arm to get it there. You see some of the passes he thrown in that game, deep balls. The guy can hum it. I mean, he's got an arm. So yeah. Chris Jones, does he get credit for it? Certainly he gets credit for it. But you don't think Josh Allen doesn't have the arm strength to still put that ball there?
I agree. You know what? Usually that's the thing you associate with Josh and this level of quarterbacks is, yes, the ability to pull that off. I do think I don't know. I don't pretend to know what it's like to throw a football under duress. And so
right.
The notion of getting hit at the right time by a guy that size, I don't know. Chris Jones, I just want to let you know that Mike Golic Jr. is the friend of defensive lineman on this show who's willing to give you credit for a game-changing moment in this game. But you're right, Dad, that it was misfires like that. Really going back to the opening drive where one of the first passes of the game was Josh trying to fit it into Stephon Diggs down the middle of the field, and he gets crunched by the safety. There's some bodies flying on that play. And Dad, I think one of the bits of fallout from this game could be the future of Stephon Diggs in Buffalo and what that looks like. He's still got 4 years left on his contract. I don't mean in any way like that, but that was just a relationship that down the stretch of the season never really seemed quite as explosive as it used to be because Buffalo tried to win this game the way they had been winning games down the stretch of the year, which is by pounding the rock on the ground. 182 yards rushing in this game, led, of course, by Josh Allen, who once you got down inside the red zone, this man was unstoppable. He was in battering ram mode, trying to get to the end zone and usually succeeding very much in that. So that's why I had picked Buffalo in this game because I thought with that as an identity, they'd be able to go out and do exactly what they did, which is control the flow of the game, control time of possession, and be ruthlessly effective in there, especially in the low red zone. And they were all of those things, but not able to pull it off because on the other side, the bad man still lives here.
Yep, he does. And connected twice with Travis Kelce. They now hold the record of touchdown passes. Between those two, they passed Brady and Gronk. So that's pretty impressive. But Josh Allen, I'm with you. I picked Buffalo as well. I thought he'd be the difference. I mean, he had 2 rushing touchdowns, led the team in rushing, and is now basically 30 yards away from Steve Young for all-time rushing yards in the playoffs. I mean, he's going to destroy that record. I mean, for the years that he still has left in this league, he has 563. Steve Young had 594. So, I mean, it's ridiculous how well he does. He is, and it's so different watching Lamar Jackson run the way he runs, the way he can make people look ridiculous, and then the way Josh Allen runs. He's way faster than you think for his size, and the dude, when he has to, will lower his shoulder. Now, he'll slide when he has to as well. But, man, he's a freight train. And getting close into that end zone, and he'll drop his shoulder with the best of them to get it in the end zone. So I did think that was going to be the difference. But, you know, here's Kansas City again, you know, proving to got that chip on their shoulder. Yeah, we got to go on the road. We'd never done it before. And just finding a way to get it done. I mean, impressive for them. Yeah. Buffalo had their chance, and it was a good game, a game we expected. But Buffalo fans just got their heart ripped out again.
They did. And Jesse, I believe, do we have what that sounded like as Buffalo was getting gutted in front of the nation?
Yeah, we had Kevin Harlan on the call with Westwood 1, and it was pretty good. Take a listen.
Tyler Bass will try a 44-yard field goal to tie. The wind at his back. The snap is good. The ball put down. The kick is up and no good. Wide right. Wide right. The Bills kicker missed a field goal. Wide right. Jubilation for the Chiefs sideline. 1:43 to go.
It was wide right. Okay, so we heard from Bass after the game. He said, ultimately, it's completely on me. I've got to do a better job of getting through to my target, hit a good ball, but it didn't work out. I feel terrible, you know. I love this team, and it hurts. This one hurts bad. Yeah, I got to do a better job. Totally on me. Guys, there were a lot of moments in this game, a lot of things you could point to on why the Bills lost, but obviously, of course, when it comes down to it at the end, people very quick to blame the kicker.
Sure. I mean, yeah, that's what you do. And by the way, he was 9 for 9 in game tying or winning situations under 2 minutes to go. So he had been money for them. And listen, we make our jokes about the kickers. You got one job to do, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, I'm not going to, well, he's going to feel horrible about it. Players are. You can't put it on him. There's too many opportunities, Mike, as you well know, in a game to make a player to change the direction something is going, to put it on that one last play. He's going to feel awful enough. Nobody's going to feel worse than Tyler Bass, believe me. But you just can't do it, and players understand that.
They do. And you're right. This game, I mean, really sports talk giving this game, because you had so many moments that are going to end up being fodder there. I didn't realize, because I was doing the live stream, so I couldn't hear audio of the game last night, that there were 10 men on the field for that fake punt for Buffalo, because I was ready to take them over the coals on that one, just because in a pivotal moment like that, I would be much more comfortable with Josh Allen with the ball in his hands if we're going to go for it on 4th down than trying to direct snap it to Damar Hamlin in that situation. But if you've got 10 guys on the field and you've got the look that you practice for, that's usually how those fake situations operate on punt. Still less than ideal there. And then you turn it around and get bailed out by one of the other rules that the competition committee is getting set to look at, and the fumble out of the back of the end zone, which, Dad, since the last time we had that debate, and I forget which game it was where that came up, I've sort of softened on it a little bit in my desire for that rule to be taken away, just because we treat the end zone so differently for offensive players that are going in scoring. So I do understand the notion of making it different for guys going in close. But my biggest takeaway from that was, man, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are good teammates, because how many times did we see them when Kadarius Toney messed up during the year go back to him? Mecole Hardman, who had a fumble on that same sort of jet sweep handoff earlier in the game, fumbled that second time on the play to make that happen. They went back to him clearly. They wanted to try and show him, hey, we know we're going to need you eventually, and man, it just cratered for them.
Boy, that fumble out of the end zone, too, that was wild, because you saw the fumble at the end, but everybody thought he was down. That one went to review, and it was so close that I wasn't sure, Mike, they were going to overturn it. because, again, you need indisputable evidence. And it looked like he wasn't on the ground yet. Any body part was down when the ball was loose. They got it right. Eventually, they did get it right. But, yeah, 2 touches, 2 fumbles. But on the plus side, Marquez Valdez-Scantling had 2 passes his way. He didn't drop any. He had 2 catches and averaged 31 yards a catch. So we had 2 big plays in that game as well. It was what we wanted, right? The lead changes. Like I said, I'm still surprised that the scoring that went on, big punch answering, that so much of the fourth quarter went with no scoring at all.
It was pretty amazing to see the way that happened and, tightening up in those big moments, which is what we were all concerned about with this Bills team, was how was it going to look in big moments? What was Sean McDermott's response going to be, considering the past? We've seen them tighten up sometimes, and part of what was written about Sean McDermott over the course of this year was how him in big moments, the tightening up that goes on tends to affect the rest of that team. Ultimately, Dad, I think a lot of it came down to the injuries we talked about going into the game for Buffalo, too, at the linebacker level. You saw a lot of A.J. Klein, who was not a guy that was supposed to be the starter at the beginning of the year, running to try and catch Jason Kelce or Travis Kelce in the middle of the field, who had a big game, multiple touchdowns for them. They exploited a lot of those matchups. They had a lot of runs that were designed to try and get them off balance and challenge at that level too. And I thought Kansas City was able to lean into that weakness enough in a game that was close and could have gone either way by the end. And Kansas City just found a way to get through yet again. And now, Dad, you kind of have to wonder what's next for this version of the Buffalo Bills, who I said going into the season, I thought they had already missed their best shot of it. They got on a hot streak because their quarterback and run game went absolutely berserk. But some of the injuries on defense, the attrition and aging in certain portions of that roster, it feels like we're due for some big changes coming up in Buffalo, and it does feel like this core has missed their chance.
Yeah, you wonder, they changed offensive coordinators during the regular season. There will be some changes. There has to be high frustration because while I'm with you that you thought maybe their time had passed, all of a sudden this year presented a great opportunity. They started playing very well. And again, it's not how you start, it's how you finish. And they were playing well at the end, and they had Kansas City at home. So it kind of all set up for them to kind of get it over the hump. And this is like Bills teams have passed, which got further. They got to the Super Bowl a bunch, but could never win it. Now they have to get past it, and it's Kansas City. Not only to get to the top level of the AFC, but it's one team to get by. It's been one team that's been their nemesis. That's been their Achilles heel right now, and that's the team they have to get over on. So you tinker with it. You have the quarterback without question, and you tinker with everything else to try and get there. And will they get there? I don't know. But you're right. They've had some really good teams, and they keep losing. So the frustration level's got to be getting higher and higher, and tired of saying, well, let's try and get them next year.
Yeah, you mentioned it. The Bills are now 0-3 in the postseason facing Mahomes when Josh Allen is the quarterback. They've lost in the divisional round for the third straight season, and the Buffalo Bills have now had their season ended by the Chiefs 3 of the last 4 years. So it's that level of frustration. And I said going into this game, it's the kind of loss that can break someone given the circumstances. You had Deion Dawkins, their left tackle, out here talking about how Mahomes hasn't really played in the environment like this. He got trolled by Pat after the game. When a team's got your number that thoroughly, there's no telling how desperate it can make you as an organization, but certainly how frustrating that's got to be as a player to try and feel like no matter what you've done, and the Buffalo Bills have done it in different ways, trying to win this one on the ground, it has changed completely, and yet the result still ends up the same. So Kansas City moves on there. If you're wondering, yes, we will have plenty for you on the shirtless Jason Kelce that helped take over the broadcast for the majority of this. That is not going to go uncovered. The Detroit Lions fan sandwich is not going to go uncovered. We will have you all things in the crowd dialed in here. But coming up next, let's get to some of the sights and sounds that we had from over this weekend. One of the best weekends in all of sports, the divisional round, with some incredible bad dad dancing in a locker room next.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It is time for Mic'd Up Monday. We're going to take you inside some winning locker rooms. First, let's hit Detroit. Lions defeating the Bucs 31-23. Lions in the NFC Championship. For the first time in 32 years, just the second time in franchise history. Here is an emotional, to say the least, Dan Campbell after the win.
You're built for this. You're built for this, man. And look what you guys did. You went out there and it's another high team that we knocked off. It's the next high team that you knock off. Do you know how hard it is to win in this league in the playoffs? Yes, sir. Do you understand what you're doing right now? What we're capable of? That's two. All right? That's two. We got two to go.
How can you not root for Dan Campbell and his dudes at this point? I don't know, because I'm rooting for him.
He's got to scream through trying not to cry in the post-game locker room. That is the kind of guy Dan Campbell is, Dad. What stuck out to you about this win for the Lions? They went out here and are able to, as he said, put down a Bucs team that had gotten weirdly hot at the end of the year and had always sort of been volatile enough to be dangerous.
So I think I want to start there and give Tampa Bay credit, because how many times during the regular season did we kind of just poo-poo the NFC South winner that they were going to get in the playoffs and then they were going to get beat, right? And we were going to put them aside. And this team with Baker Mayfield got hot. Todd Bowles says he wants Baker Mayfield back next year. We'll see what happens with that. But kudos to them, knocking off, a Philly team that had really, really turned, the wrong way. But still, they got it done. They won that game, and I think a lot of people were surprised Tampa Bay was even, at this game and playing in this game. And this game was 17-17 going into the fourth quarter. So not only were they there, but they were getting it done, standing right there toe-to-toe going into the fourth quarter. And then you had two consecutive possessions for Detroit where they went up 2 scores. And you thought, that's going to be it. Now, Tampa Bay does get a score back, miss a 2-point conversion after a nice 4th and 14 that Baker Mayfield got to Mike Evans, which was nice, and got him with the touchdown pass. So they're down 8. And then Baker, he threw a bad interception. That's Baker. Baker's been playing well, but in the end, he's trying to drive down for the tying touchdown. They needed a touchdown 2-point conversion. And he threw a bad interception. Credit Derek Barnes, read him well. He explained it after the play, what he was reading on Baker, and it was a bad throw. It was just a bad throw. but a great season for them. But Detroit, man, I mean, how do you not love Dan Campbell? How do you not love this potential matchup with two offenses that have so much depth at talent on the offensive side of the ball? So really looking forward to this one and very happy. I lived it in growing up in Cleveland as a Cleveland sports fan of the ineptitude of those teams, unfortunately. Detroit has as well. It's all been made. Last time 2 wins in a playoffs, 1957. So it's been a long time for them. So they're enjoying it, but I don't think anybody's enjoying it as much as the fans are enjoying it.
No, it's the first time they've won 2 playoff games in a season since 1957 when they won back then the NFL title before the NFL-AFL merger in the Super Bowl era. In that, it's also the first time they're going to be back in the NFC Championship since 1991-92 season. The last time the Cowboys went was 1995. So Dallas Cowboys fans look away from this as the Lions, who went 0-16 in this millennium, are now also back in the NFC Championship before you there. And, Dad, it was interesting the way they did this because Jared Goff got blitzed a ton in this game, like you'd expect from a Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, but they were able to keep him clean up front. Goff was blitzed on over 50% of his dropbacks in the game, but averaged 2.51 seconds time to throw and was pressured just 5 times against the blitz during this game and wasn't sacked in any of his 24 dropbacks against the blitz. So credit to the plan that they had. Ben Johnson and company, that was something the Eagles were rightly criticized for, not having a good enough plan for what they were going to do against the blitz. They had answers everywhere for Jared Goff, but then he executed. And that O-line led by Frank Ragnow, who went out there and was absolutely battling in that game, went in injured. He was on the injury report with a knee and a back and a toe, got rolled up on in the middle of a game where Jonah Jackson, their left guard, had already left with a knee injury and stayed in there, battled it out. They tried to pull him like a sicko later in that game, which Ben Johnson, you should be ashamed of yourself for trying to make him do that, you monster. But those guys bowed up on that side. Defensively, I thought they out-blitzed them, though. You looked at what they were able to do, Aaron Glenn, and the blitz plan they put together, the amount of free shots he got on Baker Mayfield, it was dominance up front on both sides for them and really led by Brian Branch as the blitzer on defense.
I was amazed at the amount of blitzes on both teams. And listen, we both talked about Brian Branch. Love that guy, whether it was blitzing or coming up on the run and supporting on the run as that unblocked guy and making a play in a one-on-one situation. But so much blitzing in this game, and that's where I was going to go, and I'm glad you did, because I covered the Lions a few weeks ago, and I remember going to the stadium, and they had a billboard up of the 5 starting linemen, an advertisement for something. And my comment was they needed 3 billboards there to get all the different O-line combinations they had for the year. This is an O-line where guys had been beat up. And Frank Ragnow was the one who really is the epitome of that and how he stayed in that game. But they've gone through a lot of different combinations. And to do what they did on the blitz, Goff was getting rid of the ball as well, which is a quarterback's job in a blitz. But the line did a great job as well. So you're right. Kudos to them on that and what was a real blitz-happy game between both these teams.
I would say, very blitz-happy one team. And Baker and the Browns, Dave Canales, the offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Bucks, had some good answers late. That screen touchdown against an all-out look up the middle was awesome. And Baker Mayfield put up some monster numbers, 26 of 41 for 349 yards. It's so weird that Mike Evans had 147 yards receiving this game, Dad, and it still felt like he left so much out there. The first interception bounces off his hands. There were a couple other near misses, which is the nature of the way they use him in that offense as this big play option and outlet, but it just never felt like it was all that consistent for the Bucs on offense outside of really end of half and end of game when they had to put the pedal to the metal.
Any doubt in your mind in putting a bow on Tampa Bay's season, while he's not going to get one of these monster quarterback deals, that Baker Mayfield gets a deal and is the quarterback of this team going forward, at least for the time being?
I think he's back. We were talking to Mina Kimes on the live stream last night, and she said maybe something akin to like the Ryan Tannehill 2-year deal that he got in Tennessee at some point there. I think something short-term with a decent amount of money. He's going to, I think, rightly get paid for that and be the bridge to whatever comes next. But he's absolutely, I think, solidified himself as their guy going into next season. And I mean, speaking of solidifying themselves as dudes, we've talked a lot about the Rams rookie draft class for this year. I mean, the Lions Brett Holmes, take a bow after what you saw in this game from Sam Laporta. Really, in the first half, it felt like Dad dominating at tight end, 9 catches for 65 yards in this game for him, but over 100 all-purpose yards for Jahmyr Gibbs, who I think really closed the door late in that game. You saw him when he got to one-on-one in the open field on that cutback against Antoine Winfield Jr., who's an all-pro and a great player in this league, and I mean, had him grasping at air. You knew as soon as you saw it, it was no contest because Jahmyr Gibbs is that dynamic. Their rookies took over. Credit to Jared Goff, had a phenomenal fourth quarter, looked great in this game. We'll talk about him in comparison to Brock Purdy because I think it's interesting to kind of hold those two up side by side. But the rookies for the Lions, we already talked about Branch, but Laporta and Gibbs on the other side, monsters.
Yeah, they were. And listen, the last few drafts, remember, Aiden Hutchinson has only been in the league a couple of years. I mean, they've had some choices in the last few years that have paid off for them the way it should. They're a great program right now. I mean, they're in the NFC Championship game, and they deserve to be. They absolutely deserve to be with what they're building there. Let's see what happens when they go out to play San Francisco, who is not on their A game at all in the game I covered out with Green Bay out there. But still, San Francisco is about as complete as can be. So we'll obviously talk about that.
I think that is good, though. You're saying they're a good program because it has built to this. There's been some other teams where it's felt like it's come out of nowhere or it all came together in a year. This has been a slow grind of a process, emblematic of Detroit and all the things Dan Campbell wants to represent as a city that have now gotten them to this point. And because they've gotten healthy at certain spots at the right time, offensively and defensively, it does feel like they have a very real chance going up against the Niners team that might be less than their best pitch. But coming up next, let's look at the team that's the final boss waiting at the head of all of this in the AFC Championship contender Ravens.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We are continuing with our Mic'd Up Monday segment because there's so much good sound to get to after a weekend like the one we just had. We had the Ravens defeating the Texans 34-10. Lamar Jackson, let's go, buddy. Have a day. Threw 2 touchdown passes, ran for 2 scores. They pulled away in this win. It's only the second victory in 5 playoff games for Jackson. And man, guys, we got to talk about it is a good year to be a Harbaugh, okay? John and Jim's dad, Jack. So John, Jim, Jack, and we actually found out that their mom's name is Jacqueline. So they're doing the Kardashian thing with the J names. He was getting the guy fired up post-game before we had John breaking it down.
Get in, Coach Jack. I know you got a question. I know, Holland. I know you got a question. A question? If I might. Who has it better than us?
It's the dancing for me. I can't get over it. I mean, it's so bad that it's good.
John Harbaugh has definitely seen Napoleon Dynamite. That's what that tells me. That dance clip right there. He's got canned heat in his heels tonight, and I'm fired up for him. The Harbaugh family never short on energy, Dad, and it's easy to see why after that game. The Ravens beat the Texans handily, 34-10 in this game that was closer for a while, but you saw one team was a dominant product of years of working through what Jesse just mentioned. Just the second playoff win for Lamar Jackson in his tenure for the Ravens against a Houston Texans team on the other side that finally looked their age, Dad. To me, the most telling stat in this game, 11-3. 11 penalties for the Houston Texans against just 3 for the Baltimore Ravens, and a lot of them pre-snap penalties, the kind of stuff that looked like a rattled team in the face of the Death Star that is the Ravens right now.
Without a doubt. I mean, when you have a young team who played, above their skis this year, for sure, they're ahead of schedule, then all of a sudden you're putting them in first and 15 with these procedure penalties, absolutely destroys you. So, again, just kind of like Tampa Bay, kudos to Houston, because I don't think anybody expected them to be where they were, not even to make the playoffs, let alone get to this position. They've got a great young team building forward, so good for them. But they ran into a team, and again, it was 10-10 at halftime, and then Baltimore took over. Baltimore rushed for, 229 yards in this game, 42 runs. They just battered Houston after a while, and Lamar Jackson, first player in NFL history to register 2 rushing touchdowns, 2 passing touchdowns, 100-yard rushing, and 100 passer rating in any game, regular season or postseason.
Jesus.
It's ridiculous what he just keeps doing and the records he is going to set and the ability to which he has in doing this. Add in the fact that the receivers they got, the added weapons they got. Remember, Mark Andrews, we thought was going to be back. He was not for this one, so it was still Isaiah Likely at tight end. Todd Monken leading this offense. But I'm sorry. I love Lamar Jackson. I love watching him on offense. But this Mike McDonald defense that Baltimore has with these 2 linebackers, Smith and Queen, I mean, it reminds me kind of San Francisco with Greenlaw and Warner of just dominant defensive side of the ball. Kyle Hamilton and what he's done and what they're doing up front. They are just such a physical, who's coming at you, who's going to hit you defense, lining up multiple guys on the line, just trying to confuse you and just batter you. It's absolutely amazing how, and I'm saying it right now, that I'm picking them to win. I'm picking them to beat Kansas City.
I know. I hate myself because coming off that Chiefs game last night where we both picked the Bills and they win, and it's a close game, but they still won. I thought in my head, I'm done picking against Mahomes in the playoffs. I did it last year in the Super Bowl, and I looked like an idiot. The guy just doesn't lose. They always have found a way to morph this team and whatever it needs to be. And then I looked up and remembered who we had seen earlier in the weekend and thought, oh, that's right, I'm going to pick the Ravens next week too, because, Dad, they just right now, and I think for them, again, we keep going back to, and so much of football is this, man, they stayed healthy in all of these places. That rest versus rust debate, the rest overwhelmingly in their favor. Kyle Hamilton, a testament to that. They are so fast, physical, and have a decided schematic advantage now on both sides of the ball. Like you mentioned, Todd Monken and what he's done to help progress this offense to get the best out of both Lamar Jackson and the rest of the guys in this unit. Like Lamar Jackson, if they complete the mission on this, and even already now, finally, I think, is going to get the credit he deserves as being one of the like Mahomes, Burrow level quarterbacks in the NFL. Should have before. He was an MVP at such a young age, and we talked about the rarefied air he'd be with 2 at the age he's at now, but he is absolutely in that cast of game-breaking quarterbacks up top in the NFL right now. But then you look at the other side, Dad, you and I were talking before the break. You look in the stat column, like the raw stats, and the Baltimore Ravens, 0 sacks in this game versus the Texans, who had 3 on the other side. And you go, wow, that feels crazy. Next gen stats, the Ravens had 12 different pass rushers generate a pressure in this game and averaged their 3rd quickest time to pressure of the season in 2.4 seconds. They were getting guys in CJ Stroud's face from everywhere. But even with that, you think that's a scheme thing. You look at all the individual parts, what guys like Justin Madubuike just do against the run on any given down, what Jadeveon Clowney has meant for them on the edge of that defense, completely shedding blockers there. They are, to a man, an amazing football team, and then you add in the fact that they are galaxy brain in terms of what they throw at you.
Just a moment on Madubuike and what he has done. He was a 3rd rounder back in 2020, ended up having 13 sacks in the regular season. His 3rd round deal, he just finished the end of his contract. He was on a 4-year, $4.8 million contract, so a little over $1 million a year that he was making. They tried to sign him to an extension in training camp, and he said no. He felt he was going to have a good year. He bet on himself. That dude is going to go from making about 1-2 a year to over $20 million a year. He is going to get paid, and kudos to him for it, to betting on himself, not signing that extension. Now he is going to get his due.
I say it because it's the same team. He's Joe Flaccoing this on defense. Like, could potentially ride betting on himself through a Super Bowl run that ultimately nets him a career-defining payday on the other side. So, yes, salute to Justin Madubuike. And I'm with you, Dad. This is the most complete football team remaining in the postseason right now. Everybody else you can kind of poke and find flaw. And even with this team, I think you could say, hey, we saw going back to the Rams game, if you're going to try and get over on them, trying to do it on the ground is going to be your best bet. And Houston was not going to be a good matchup for that, right? The Texans have been one of the worst rushing teams for the vast majority of the season in the NFL. That showed up again, the downs and distances here. Kansas City is going to pose more of a threat there. We saw in this last game, one of their highest percentage of 3 tight end looks this season. They were ruthlessly efficient out of that. Isaiah Pacheco helped slam the door and has been a nightmare all postseason. So they're going to be able to hit them where it hurts. But overall, you're not going to find any respite at linebacker the way that the Chiefs did in that matchup against the Buffalo Bills. The secondary is full of some really compelling parts against a receiver room that's not really the one you have to worry about consistently outside of Rashee Rice. So they should absolutely, I'm surprised they're only a 3-point favorite going into that game, Dad, which is a testament to the respect Mahomes gets, because the AFC Championship game, now the 6th straight that Mahomes and Kelce will be playing in at the helm of the Kansas City Chiefs, is still the Patrick Mahomes Invitational until further notice. So I guess that's why you get a 3-point spread.
Yeah, this defense, 18 interceptions, 13 fumble recoveries. I mean, they're not only a dominating defense, but they will turn you over as well. So what a matchup. Mahomes against Lamar Jackson, trying to get a hold of him. Kansas City, this game had a quarterback who wasn't going to juke you but was going to run over you. Now they face a quarterback that is going to juke you and run past you and by you and away from you.
When does Spags sleep, do we think, at this point in the postseason? You have to go game plan from trying to stop an actual moose that's loose in the backfield. Like, if you hit Josh Allen with your car, I cannot imagine the damage he would do to the front end of that thing. And now you're going to go to Lamar Jackson, who's like trying to tackle the wind on any given play at the helm of the most prolific rushing offense that the NFL has to offer. Good luck, Spags. You've clearly faced a lot of wild stuff in your career, but this is a 2-game stretch for another attempt at a Super Bowl run is impressive. Coming up next, let's get to the game we were into in person this weekend in San Francisco as they took down the Green Bay Packers.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. We are continuing our recap of what was an amazing weekend. 49ers defeating the Packers 24-21. So the Niners advancing to their third consecutive NFC Championship game, fourth in the past 5 years. It definitely wasn't easy, okay? They trailed 21-14 entering the final quarter. They entered Saturday's game, too, with some surprising stats here. 0-30 under Coach Kyle Shanahan in games, including playoffs, that they trailed by 7 or more points entering the fourth quarter. They were 0-3 in games like that during the regular season. Nick Bosa afterwards talked about the importance of managing to eke out a win in that situation.
We needed a win like that, I feel like.
Why do you think? Why do you feel like you needed a win?
We just haven't come from behind in a while. It's a really good team and really good coaching, and it just helps you get more battle tested.
They haven't come from behind in a while, but they managed to do it. Amazing. You guys were there. Look at this pic. Who's got it better than you two? A father-son duo. We love it.
I had it pointed out by so many people, the hilarity of the rope keeping us out there. That's what different field passes will do to you, and having a rule follower for the oldest son, where I wasn't going to let the rope actually, or I let the rope keep me from making this an objectively better picture.
I was going to say that had to be odd for you because you call games all the time as well, and you're used to walking around on the field, you know, talking to players or coaches, and you had to be behind the rope.
Tell you what I wasn't used to. You can throw that picture back up there. I had to buy that like cream shacket when I got to San Francisco. I went on a day trip to go up there at the game with a friend. Bought that shacket. I have never gotten more compliments about anything I have ever worn in my entire life.
It's really
I didn't know how to
nice.
handle it. I was drunk with power and somehow managed to get through a sporting event where I ate sporting event food. I had cheesesteak, I had chicken tenders, fries, all sorts of stuff. Didn't spill on it once. Got out of there with a clean bib.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah, it was a really nice jacket. Really nice jacket.
Yeah, it looks good. Shackets are in.
All right, I don't know what a shacket is.
It's big guy friendly. It's layering, Dad, for the big guys here, so we can kind of show off, because we're not as stylish as the skinny guys, but when you've got something you can throw over the top, it hides some of my lesser features, and it keeps everything tight and sucked in there.
Senior, a shacket is a shirt jacket. It's a shirt, jacket, shacket.
Is that?
It's a shirt.
It looked nothing like a shirt. That was a jacket. That was a jacket.
No,
it wasn't like it.
It was kind of a shirt, though.
Yeah.
It's a shacket.
A shacket? Okay, that's a first for me. Either way, I liked it and I wanted it. So, next time you need to buy me a gift, maybe get me a shacket.
Yeah.
Oh my God, there we go. Dad shacket era incoming here. Dad, in the meantime, while we get you fit for a shacket, the 49ers are heading back to the NFC Championship, their third straight NFC Championship game. And as Jesse mentioned there, the Niners are the first team to make the playoffs in the last 13 years without overcoming a second half deficit to win a game. So they had to flex a muscle that they hadn't used in quite a while. And it was a wild game. You were on the call for this one, Dad. This was not Brock Purdy's best day. Pretty much everyone around the stadium kind of recognized that. And he managed to muster it late, but Green Bay looked like the better team, especially along both lines of scrimmage for the entirety of this game.
I think there were 3 surprises in the playoffs. Tampa Bay winning a game and playing in that next round. Houston even making the playoffs, right? And quite honestly, probably Green Bay making the playoffs. Green Bay, with the amount of rookie and second-year receivers that they have, then with a first-year starting quarterback, I don't think anybody saw this one coming either, but they started playing extremely well. Jordan Love wasn't turning the ball over. I mentioned it 1,000 times. Last 8 regular season games, 18 touchdowns, just 1 interception. He had been playing great. Aaron Jones, he ran for over 100 yards in this one, making it 5 straight games, including the playoffs to finish the season, that he ran for over 100 yards. They were playing incredibly well. The leading receiver was a rookie in Jaden Reed, who didn't catch 1 ball in the Dallas game. That's how much wealth they have at that position. They didn't even need him to catch a ball to beat the hell out of the Cowboys. So their future, like Houston's, is incredibly bright. But they were in this game. I mean, where Houston just got really spanked in the second half, Green Bay was right there. Green Bay was playing them. Green Bay's defense the Joe Barry-led defense there, which had gone under a lot of turmoil, and there was question whether Joe Barry, the D coordinator, was going to be back. They started playing well at the end of the season. And this is a tough offense to play against in San Francisco because of the multitude of talent that they have. But Brock Purdy was off. You know, you sit there and talk about rust versus rest and that whole deal. He didn't play in that last game, so basically it was 19 days off for a guy. While he's been playing great, it doesn't have, 5 years in the league just yet. He was off. Was it that? Was it everybody started going back to at the combine his small hands? It was wet out there. It was one of those rains, Mike, that it rained just enough to make it slick. And you could see at times he would take the snap, he was back in the pocket, and during the play, he would take his right hand off the ball and wipe it on his towel during the play to wipe his hand to try and get it drier and then put it back on the ball and make a throw. But he was off in his throws. Jordan Love was off in some of his throws as well. And I mentioned Jordan Love not throwing interceptions late in the season. He threw 2 in this game, and both were on him. The first one was a ball way behind that a receiver ended up tipping in the air. And the last one is one you learn from, Mike, right? I mean, look at situations. They're trying to drive down to tie the game. It's 24-21. They probably need 25 yards to get in field goal range for their kicker, Anders Carlson, who had missed one earlier in the game. But get him in field goal position to tie it. It's first down. They have a timeout left. And Jordan Love rolls right and does the classic mistake of just trying to wheel one way across his body in kind of desperation, and it's up there like a hot air balloon and gets picked off. And there was just no need to do it. And that's something he's going to learn. While he had a great first-year starting year, that's somewhere you need to learn, where Matt LaFleur is going to sit with him and say, listen, Jordan, we didn't need that there. We didn't need the hero ball on that throw. We're still within 20 to 30 yards of getting in field goal range with a timeout left. That wasn't the time to do it, but, Jordan threw it up there. And it's tough to criticize him too much because he's a big reason they were where they were. But it showed where youth kind of came into play there on that play because they played a hell of a game on the road in San Fran.
He's got a lot of Josh Allen to his game when it comes to that. Like the idea that you've got to kind of take the good with the bad, and you're going to find ways and places where it's appropriate to corral. And that is there, too. He treated that like it was the last play of the game. Like it was fourth down, there were 2 seconds left, and he had to have it when that wasn't the case in that spot. You also had Dre Greenlaw with yet another interception return where everyone on his team and everyone in his life is just begging him to get down. And he's out here arm-overing with the football. I saw at the end of the game, he blamed Fred Warner, who said Fred, his linebacker mate, told him before the game, you're going to get a pick 6. And so he said every time it happened, I was trying to make Fred right. But you saw everyone in America was all of a sudden imbued with dad energy, rising up at once, just yelling, get down.
Mike, I thought his own team was going to tackle him. It was stunning, the shot of their sideline of everybody saying, get down. And you're right. He's like reversing field, arm overing. I'm like, what the hell is he doing? I swear I thought his own team was going to tackle him. But listen, they pull out the win. Brock Purdy has the drive when he needs it, right? 6 for 7, 47 yards, converted a third down, on a pass to Ayuk and also to Conley. That was a big thing, and that's something we need to keep an eye on with them. Is Deebo Samuel went out with a shoulder injury. Yeah. Remember, he got hurt in week 6 against Cleveland, missed week 7, week 8. They struggled. They lost 3 in a row. Trent Williams was also out then. He had cracked his shoulder then when he hurt his shoulder. X-rays are back. He didn't do that again, so they're hoping he'll be back. But, Mike, they're counting on a Chris Conley who had 3 receptions coming into that game for the year, a Ray McLeod who had 12 receptions coming into the year, Jawan Jennings, a little more, 19 receptions coming into the year. But, you have a guy you count on so much in Deebo Samuel out. Other guys stepped up when they needed to.
They did step up, but now going forward, it's going to be interesting because I think a lot of Purdy's problems came down to pressure in the pocket, which Detroit is capable of putting on him. And then the 49ers defense, on the rush defense especially, are who we thought they were. Aaron Jones over 100 yards in that game. The Packers got it however they wanted. I'm surprised this spread is a touchdown because I think the Lions are built to hit them where it hurts, especially up front on both sides of the football. Coming up next, we'll look at some other winners from the weekend and figure out how we're supposed to judge the quarterback play that we saw on divisional weekend.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. Each Monday after NFL playoff action, we're going to be talking about the moments that got fans' heart rates racing, their heart rate elevated. It is brought to you by Bayer. Did you know that your heart attack risk can more than double when your home team plays? Crazy. Learn more and assess your heart risk factors at checkyourheartrisks.com. Brought to you by Bayer Aspirin, the official sponsor of Fans' Hearts. So guys, with 4 divisional round games this weekend, plenty to choose from. What got your heart racing this weekend?
Yeah, we have a lot of great options here. There was a lot of great football, but I think there really is only truly one answer to this, and the answer came in the form of a shirtless member of this year's class of People's Sexiest Man Alive. He is also known during his day job as the starting center for the Philadelphia Eagles. The All-Pro Jason Kelce was in the box with Taylor Swift and the rest of the Kelce family on the road in Buffalo, and Jason, that beauty, shirtless, out the window, chugging Labatt Blue Lights, belching at the entire crowd. Dad, this was a sight to behold, but my favorite part about everything that went on with Jason Kelce, who was out with Bills Mafia before the game. Yeah. He did the bowling ball shot with them. Yeah. He's chugging beers and shirtless. Is his wife, Kylie, you can see in the background, completely unfazed by all of this. Oh. This is a slow Tuesday in the Kelce household for her.
I was going to say, this isn't out of the ordinary for him. This is the norm, right? And that's why his wife isn't shocked at all about it. This is listen, we all think he's done and going to retire. So with that comes kind of a relief as well, right? A sadness for the years he's played. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame, but kind of a release, and he just kind of let it all go. Hanging out with both fan bases, out there with Bills Mafia, and then up in the suite with Taylor Swift and all the Kansas City Chief fans. By the way, the bowling ball shot. Any issue with that? On your broadcast last night, my partner on Golic and Smetty, Jess Smetana, said she would never do a shot out of a bowling ball because, let's be honest, no one's bringing a bowling ball specific for the shots. It's somebody's bowling ball that has been used. So fingers have been in the bowling ball, and now you're pouring booze.
See, I think that's...
Yeah.
You don't think Bills Mafia would have their own, like, this is my shooting bowling ball. I just bring this one to the tailgates for us to get drunk out of, and then I got my actual bowling ball over here. It seems like for a lot of reasons you would want to keep those separate.
Also,
no,
doesn't alcohol kill germs? Come on. Like,
listen, it's not going to affect me one bit. I've drinking out of a lot worse. So, but I think it's somebody's bowling ball. I do. I think they're on a Thursday night bowling ball league, and then they bring that ball to the game and drink out of it.
Here's my thing. They probably give it a rinse coming. Like, I'd imagine they've got.
You think?
Get a little Purell in there. A little Purell.
No shot. No chance they give it a rinse.
You put it in the dishwasher with the rest of the stuff that's going to make its way to the tailgate?
Yeah, I don't know. God, I feel like alcohol kills germs. That's what I'm telling myself. And
I would agree.
At that point, it's kind of like, I feel like if you're also at a tailgate taking a shot out of a bowling ball, it's not like that's your first drink of the day. So,
well, that's exactly right.
You know, at that point, you're probably just like, whatever. Maybe if it was like, I just showed up and that's the first thing you want me to do, I might have some mental reservations. I would still do it, but I might have some mental reservations. But at that point, you know, when you're taking the shots out of the bowling ball, you don't really care where the alcohol is coming from.
Absolutely agree. Now, the biggest question for me, because the whole Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce romance blossomed during the season, and Jason Kelce was obviously busy playing on the Eagles during the season. Do we know if they actually met before yesterday? And if not, this was the first encounter that Taylor Swift had with her future brother-in-law, shirtless, slamming his naked body up against the suite, screaming his lungs out with his wife completely I mean, just the scene of that. To look at this guy do that, if you have never really seen him do it before, go, oh my God, and then look over at his wife expecting this shocked look and just seeing a look like, yeah, okay, just another day, going, what the hell are we doing? Who are these people? Do we think she has met him already?
We can only pray. We can only hope that this was the first time they met.
Yes.
Because that would be so poetic. As Taylor Swift herself has said, it's going to be forever or it's going to go down in flames. So, that feels poignant to this situation.
In any relationship, you want to lead with honesty. Do I believe they've met before this? Probably. But in terms of lore around this relationship, I am now saying it is canon that this was their first meeting. And I can imagine the conversation between Kylie Kelce, Jason's wife, and Jason on the way over. It's like, all right, Jason, listen, Travis really likes her. She's obviously a global pop phenomenon and one of the most famous people on earth. Maybe we can keep the shirt on tonight, babe. What do we think about that? And then Jason's, doing the good husband thing. He's nodding. He's agreeing with her. And then all of a sudden, that first Labatt blue light hits his lips. And then he sees his brother score one of his 2 touchdowns in a playoff game. And you're right, Dad. He's probably snapped into fan mode now postseason. And you could see he was both drunk with beer and with power because he didn't just go up against the glass. He climbed down into the crowd before there with the confidence of only a man who knows I am the baddest dude in this stadium. And no one's acted. They were booing him. Everybody had something for him, but nobody was getting within a certain range. It was like when you see a lion surrounded by a bunch of hyenas, they're only going to come but so close. And Jason knew that. And so once all that took over, then it's like, well, Taylor was going to learn eventually if she didn't already. And so it might as well be at the Bills game.
And quite honestly, I think him with the shirt off was the tame way. I mean, anybody looking at his wife, Kylie, and saying, oh, my God, what's he doing? And she'd be like, well, he kept his pants on. So, it's a positive, right?
That's a win given the situation. So Jason Kelce, absolutely our heart-racing moment of the weekend. People, you should be ashamed of yourself, magazine, for not just making him outright the sexiest man alive. Look at what you could have had, and instead you opted for some normal skinny. I don't even remember who it was. That's the point.
I don't either.
Because we all knew Jason Kelce was the actual answer to this question. The other question that I want to ask you, Dad, as it pertains to some of the heart-racing moments we saw over the weekend, was how we're going to judge the quarterback performances from this weekend. Because I've already seen in the morning talk show rounds, it's going to be kind of split decisions about how people deal with Josh Allen coming off that game because they lost. And on the other side for Brock Purdy, it's going to continue the most toxic conversation in the world surrounding his play because he didn't play very well, but they won. And that's the only thing that people of a certain ilk value when it comes to their quarterback play. So how do you look at what we saw this weekend, maybe from those 2 guys in particular as the case study, because Mahomes did his usual thing. Well, Lamar Jackson's going to be the MVP, did his usual thing. The young players there at certain junctures looked like young guys in Stroud and Jordan Love. But with Purdy and with Josh specifically, I think it's an interesting dichotomy based on how their games went.
Here's how I look at both of them. Josh Allen, the expectation is the game is on his shoulders. Brock Purdy, the expectation is the game is not on his shoulders. The Brock Purdy is to be that great point guard. Now, he makes some nice passes. Not in this one, he didn't really overall. He was off a bit, but he had that nice last drive. His job is to get it to Brandon Ayuk, to Deebo Samuel, to George Kittle, to hand the ball off or throw it to Christian McCaffrey. Spread that ball out. Josh Allen is meant to do it all. Is meant to make the passes, hit the receivers, or tuck that ball down and run. They're calling runs for him, or he's scrambling on his own. So I think going into it, it's like, hey, Brock, you don't have to win us the game. We have a ton of talent that they have put together. That John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan have put together for you, where while they're obviously putting talent around Josh Allen, it's still, hey, Josh, at the end of the day, you got to win us the game. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to what you do to help us win the game. So I think that's the biggest difference between the two, and you keep tinkering with it. It's tinkered with enough in San Francisco. They have the talent, but to me, it's like, okay, what do you do next in Buffalo now? What's next? You got Diggs a few years ago. That relationship was good. Now it doesn't seem as much. You got Cook, who was running well at the end of the year. You're trying to build that defense more, but then you had some injuries. So what's the next iteration of the Buffalo Bills? We know what San Francisco is going to be, right? Even if they lose this game, we pretty much know what they're going to be. But what is it going to be for Buffalo? Because they have to get over that Kansas City hump.
They do, and Josh is expected to be the one to do it. I think, Dad, and this just sort of popped into my head, it's the levels of expectation based on ability, right? And this is not to demean Brock Purdy, and so much of the conversation around him kind of puts you into a corner where it sounds like you're trying to slight a dude who's so impressive. Like, what he's done, the fact that he managed to have, as a young player and as a guy that was drafted where he was, to have that game where he was bad, he looked bothered by the weather, he looked bothered by the pressure, and then to come out on that final drive and have some legitimately impressive throws, like, that's awesome. And we're absolutely going to celebrate that, and right too, while also acknowledging that when you compare him to quarterbacks like Josh, it's like comparing Hawkeye to the Hulk in the Avengers. They're all superheroes, but we know they're not built the same. Josh Allen is a world ender. He's one of the guys that comes from a different planet, and so yeah, we're going to expect him to shoulder a different version of the load based on that, based on the paycheck that he draws, like all this stuff. When people bring up Brock Purdy's salary, like, yeah, he's not paid like the guy that's expected to go out there and win them the game at every turn. And so I do think that perspective around what these guys are asked to do within the body of the team matters.
Completely agree. That's why I talk about that play, that throw to the end zone, even though Chris Jones pushed the offensive lineman back to him, that Josh Allen is still, the thought of Josh Allen still expected to make that play. Because he's this big, strong quarterback that could stand flat-footed and fire a ball, that he would get it there. And he didn't. So that's one of the things you say is, oh, okay, great play by Chris Jones. I agree, and a great bull rush there. But Josh Allen, we've seen him do miraculous things, and I think the expectation was he would get it there as well because the receiver was open in the end zone.
Yeah, and I think with Josh, too, now, there's also the backdrop of what's gone on with this team since he's been at the helm, all the playoff stats that we mentioned about him constantly finding a ceiling in the other AFC elite, where it's been either the Chiefs ending his season or the one other team was the Joe Burrow-led Cincinnati Bengals. So one of the other quarterbacks that people hold in that regard, and it's twofold because he deserves a lot of credit for even getting them there down the stretch of this season, but it's also a lot of people, and I think Bomani Jones tweeting about this, about how other quarterbacks are treated, specifically quarterbacks that don't look like Josh, when in the past we've seen Lamar Jackson fall short in the postseason, or other high-quality players who haven't won in this time of year, who seem like they are always held to that standard that it now seems like Josh is going to run into, because no matter what the Bills look like going forward, Dad, he's going to be the one that's there. They're going to have to change the way they build because of him, the same way that Kansas City's had to do with Pat. And so he's going to continue to have that expected of him. And now I do wonder if, because I don't think you can downgrade him at all. Josh Allen is still one of the 3 best quarterbacks in the NFL based on what we saw this season.
He is, but the frustration level has to be there, because one thing we've seen out of Josh Allen that hurts the team is while you rely on him, he makes it at times has that turnover, especially in the red zone, right? And we've seen them lose for those reasons at times. Now, no turnovers yesterday. He's 17-0 when he doesn't turn the ball over going into this game. Didn't turn the ball over, and they lost. So again, it's going to be, my God, he did what he normally does when we win, and we still lost. So that's got to be damning for that team to say when he's usually at his best, we're going to pull out a win, and they couldn't do it. And oh, by the way, to the same team that's been knocking them out in Kansas City.
It is going to be interesting, too, if there's ever, like, what happens with Sean McDermott from here on out with that team, because it's kind of like the conversation we had with Mike McCarthy in Dallas is, you've won so many games and you've lost in 3 straight divisional rounds, but you're also there every year. And are you just running into a force of nature? Like, are the Chiefs just one of those teams that, like the Golden State Warriors in the NBA, or when LeBron James was in the East and you had all those 1-seed Raptors teams that just could not get over a hump that's the size of a mountain that's named LeBron James? Like, Patrick Mahomes now, through the early portion of his career, is absolutely on that track where if he keeps this up, Dad, very easy conversation between him and Tom Brady for the greatest of all time. And Patrick's already infinitely more talented than Tom ever was, can do things that Brady could have never dreamed of, and now is on the track at the right age to where, accomplishment-wise, there's a very real opportunity for him to match all of that. And so how much shame is that in losing to that every year? Is there really for Buffalo, if you're honest with yourself, despite having a guy who ability-wise is on par with that?
Well, I mean, you look at the Jim Kelly years and the other great quarterbacks in that era, and Jim Kelly, they would lose in the Super Bowls. Again, get there, but lose. And even LeBron, I'd say more Michael Jordan, because Michael Jordan never lost in the finals. So you were a great team or a great player matched up in the Jordan era, you were screwed, because Jordan was just better than everybody else, and his team was better than everybody else, and they kept winning over and over again. So if there was another team that was really good, it's like you lost your opportunity because of the Jordan era. And that's what we're seeing right now with the Kansas City Chiefs. And that era is other good teams, when they have their chances, are coming up short. And it's like, okay, how much do we have to keep tinkering and rebuilding to get over this hump when we consistently have a pretty good team? We just can't get there because of this other team. A lot of it's bad timing, but still it doesn't stop you from trying to build. And that's what's going to be interesting to me for Buffalo is, what do you try next? What's next? What do you tinker with next to try and get over this hump?
Yeah, I certainly think, Stephon Diggs and what his future looks like there. We know that there was all the rumored unrest from his side. You had his brother's tweets from during the season. You had the reported weird friction before the year that Josh Allen had to come out and actually address heading into training camp with that team. What are they going to do at number 2? We talked about Khalil Shakir and what he was doing for that team, but no Gabe Davis in that game, who usually has been a guy that can be a huge swing state for them if he's on. But, Dad, I think a lot of the change has to come defensively. They have been old and beat up down the spine of that defense that used to be such the strength for Sean McDermott, who took back over play calling this year after Leslie Frazier decided to take a season off because people felt like there had maybe been a power struggle there. There's going to be a lot of changes that I think come up with that group, and a lot of free agents. I saw Adam Schefter tweeting about it last night. But, Dad, I guess if we're having this conversation about quarterbacks, it is interesting, I think, to bring up Jared Goff as sort of the middle ground, right? Because what we saw from him yesterday, pretty damn good game, and a guy that feels more Brock Purdy-esque in what his team asks him to do and has fit into that situation, but through 2 stops now has been a guy that's been able to win playoff games with multiple teams. He's got the distinction of having been a former number 1 overall pick, and so maybe there is rightly more expected of him, especially early on, and we found out, or at least all felt publicly, like there was a ceiling that we ran into when you had him with the Sean McVay-led Rams, and now with Detroit, it's still a pretty specific offense. Like, Jared Goff is a cheat code when it comes to play action shots deep across the middle. He can basically throw through time when it comes to that particular area. And then some of the other stuff, having to get away from pressure, the extracurriculars that I think we associate with the best quarterbacks in the league, right? Part of it's an aesthetic. It's, hey, can you buy time and bail your guys out? Can you make some of those throws like you can? Like, we wouldn't expect Jared Goff to make that Josh Allen throw that we're talking about this morning. If that were Brock Purdy, or if that were Jared Goff in that particular spot where you've got Deion Dawkins being deposited in their lap, you wouldn't be sitting here saying right now, yeah, you're supposed to make that throw still if it's Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, not if you're Jared Goff or Brock Purdy.
Yeah, I'm with you, but I think one other thing that helps Goff is kind of what they did for Purdy in San Francisco, even though, the thought was Purdy wasn't going to be the guy as quickly as he was, but what was built around him, same thing with Goff. Look at how that offense has evolved to, as I'll say again, like just dispersing the ball and weapons, right? You have the two-headed monster, you have, Jahmyr Gibbs and you have Montgomery, who not only run the ball, but both catch it out of the backfield. You have St. Brown, who's been phenomenal at wide receiver. Sam Laporte has been one of the big surprises this year of coming in as a second-round pick tight end and doing what he has done, setting all kind of records. And then you have the mixture of a Josh Reynolds, a Jameson Williams, who are stepping up as well. So it gives Goff more options. It's kind of like what Stafford got, with Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell, right? All of a sudden, there's more out there than Cooper Kupp, who was dealing with a hamstring. It's like, okay, where else are we going with the ball? You had Higbee at tight end, but then you get these 2 young receivers, especially Puka, doing what he's doing. So now you're a little more advanced there, have a little more or a few more people to throw to. And I think that's what happened in Detroit with Goff, is he has more weapons out there. He doesn't have to just laser focus on 1 or even 2. He's got 3 to 4, at times to 5 in a game that he can go to.
he's got that, and the reason Jared Goff is always going to struggle in a credit conversation is because he also wound up in a situation where, once again, he's got a play caller whose names people readily know. Like, Ben Johnson has become a household name. He's going to be one of the hot ticket coordinator to head coaching candidates for this offseason. And so a lot like when we were in Los Angeles and you had the conversation about McVay being in Goff's helmet right up until the echo of the snap, here you've got Ben Johnson, who's also pulling the strings that makes this a complicated evaluation, as it always is with quarterback in the NFL. So that's going to be something we keep spinning the wheel on.
Welcome back to GoJo and Golic. It is time for Cash It or Trash It, presented by DraftKings Fantasy Sports. Check out what DraftKings has to offer this season with code GoJo, because life's more fun when you're in on the action. DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com for details. So, guys, we highlighted the spread of the Bucs-Lions games on Friday. We asked you if Tampa could cover 6.5 against Detroit. GoJo, you were all over it, predicting the Lions to handle their business, and that is just what they did. Now, that was despite Mike Evans' best efforts, okay? Because the now free agent receiver went off, 8 receptions, 145 receiving yards, and a touchdown. He cashed a lot of people's over tickets for his props, okay? But did he make your all-weekend team? That's the question I want to know.
Ooh.
That's a great question, and Dad, he probably should have, considering I think he's kind of like, and I thought about this watching the game, he's sort of the Josh Allen of wide receivers. He's so physically imposing and gifted that you almost felt like he left more on the field because of some of the drops early on, some of the miscommunication, but then you just keep going deep to the guy, and eventually he's going to give you gifts like he did at the end of the half and the rest of that game. So absolute freak show effort from a Hall of Fame receiver in Mike Evans.
I mean, think he's going to get paid? I mean, just routinely over 1,000 yards. He's up there. Been in the league a while, for sure. It'll be interesting what kind of a deal that he gets, quite honestly. of how long it would be, because he's been there a while, but man, he's so productive, such a big target.
Yeah, he's an absolute freak and a difference maker. He's been catching go balls in Tampa from someone playing quarterback for the better part of over a decade now. So hopefully he gets to continue that. But not on my all-weekend team, Dad. Let's get to some of the weekend's other top performers. We'll go first and second team for this one and start with the second team. For me, I was pumped to see this as someone who has a lot of respect for the man. My second teamer goes to Ken Niumatalolo, the former Navy head football coach, who just announced that it was announced he was taking the job to coach San Jose State now and be their head guy. He replaces Brent Brennan, who left and took the job at Arizona on Thursday, and goes there as Navy's all-time winningest coach. Now getting another crack at this, Dad. You and I have both covered Navy games. One of the best men and best leaders in the sport, and so I'm glad that he is going to be around more young people because they will benefit from being around him.
Spent last year at UCLA, correct? Helping them out, I know. And he's a guy who you would be honored to send your child to play, your young man to play for, and to be led by. I mean, so well respected, such a great leader of men and a great teacher. Can't say enough good things about him. So congrats to him for his next move. You knew he was going to be a coach again. He's just too good at leading people. And again, whether it's to great football seasons or not, great at leading people and helping them become adult young men.
Now, it is interesting and worth noting that the offense is not expected to be the triple option, which is kind of a bummer. It would have been fun to see San Jose State. I love the triple getting inserted into places, especially ones that Notre Dame doesn't have to play anymore. But it will not be expected to run the triple there. Is expected to tailor it about being wide open, make use of all the West Coast gifts that you've got there. So congratulations to Coach Ken on landing another job. Who do you got for the second team, Dad?
Second team, I have Udonis Haslem of the Miami Heat. So listen to this. He averaged 7.5 points and a little over 6 rebounds a game in his career. Never made an all-star team. Never had a triple-double. Never signed a max deal, and was never even won Player of the Week award. But he got his jersey retired and hung in the rafters for the Miami Heat. He spent his entire 20-year career with the Heat. He was part of 3 championship teams, and you want to talk about what his teammates thought of him? He was a captain 16 of his 20 seasons in Miami. So his jersey number 40 was retired, raised to the rafters. He's one of only 3 players who spent a career of 20 years or more with one franchise. Dirk Nowitzki, one in Dallas, and Kobe with the Lakers, the other. So while a guy, it's undrafted, this is an undrafted player, to know that while stats, we all look at stats of what he meant to a team for the longevity, being a captain that long, and just being one of the guys there, kind of glue to hold a team together, that his jersey was retired. So kudos to him. Very, very cool to see.
I mean, they basically kept him around as a vibes guy, taking up a roster spot when he was so old he was never actually going to play in those last couple of seasons. So he's an all-timer. I saw him on the podcast, the OGs that he does with Mike Miller, the other day, just cemented the legacy, where I don't remember what the source of the issue was, but he apologized to Bill Russell for something and talked about how much he respect him, but then capped it off by saying, Boston fans, F you, I'm never going to apologize to you for anything. So if you're expecting that, keep it moving. So exactly the kind of reasons why that guy ultimately has his jersey hung in the rafters there. And while we're talking about basketball-related accomplishment, Dad, I'll go with my first team overall pick. Stanford University's Tara Vanderveer, their head coach, passed Mike Krzyzewski for the all-time winningest coach in Division I basketball history. She won her 1,203rd game on Sunday and has now herself accumulated more wins than 355 of the 360 Division I women's basketball programs in NCAA hoops. Just remarkable. She's 70 years old. It's her 38th year at Stanford. She won with arguably her best player not on the floor here, and had a ton of old players. I know Chiney Gwumake, who was my former teammate at ESPN and one of the stars for Tara in that Stanford program. She was back in the house for that one. Raz Goldenwude, Jennifer Ozzie, Andrew Luck was in the house there too. So everyone coming out to celebrate Coach Vanderveer, who does not like the spotlight at all. I remember she set another wins record when Shanae and I were doing the show and came on and was very, mute about it, didn't want to celebrate herself, but has plenty of people in her corner, like most great coaches, who were very ready to celebrate her in this accomplishment.
I mean, what an accomplishment, right? I mean, and obviously not done yet, but just incredible what she has done, and to be recognized for it, the longevity of it is absolutely incredible. So congrats to her as she continues on and will keep stacking up wins as she goes along. My first teamer is going to be a sophomore from Alabama, 20 years old, by the name of Nick Dunlap, who won the American Express on the PGA Tour this past weekend. He became the first amateur to win a tour event since Phil Mickelson in 1991, and he's the youngest amateur to win on the PGA Tour since 1910. He actually brought homework with him to this tournament. Nobody knows if he did it or not, but he brought homework. And we always talk about the nerves of a putt, Mike. He had a 6-foot putt on the final hole to secure a one-stroke win in this event. And how nervous he had to be. He talked about how the nerves were he was trying not to let them get the best of him. But 20 years old, the amateur, who is he's the reigning U.S. amateur champion, his first amateur win against, like I said, Mickelson won the Tucson Open in 1991. I mean, what a weekend for him, and the nerves that had to just keep building and building all the way to a 6-foot putt to drain at the end to get the win.
He and Tiger Woods, the only players to win both the U.S. Amateur and the U.S. Junior Amateur coming up. So rarefied air for him already. And I think this is something that happens so often in sports, Dad, that maybe I feel more now as I'm starting to stack a few more years, is just how much we normalize the high pressure, ability of players at such an early age. We do it with guys that come into the NFL as 22 and 23-year-olds who are given the keys to franchises. The same in the NBA with players even younger than that, 18, 19-year-old guys that are expected to come in and lead grown men to victory there. Guys 20 years old trying to navigate all this right now against guys that he's grown up watching on TV, and the sport that he's grown up seeing this way is absolutely wild. Good for him, man. That's awesome. Love to see young dudes ball out.
He is, since the inception of the official world rankings in 1986, he's the lowest ranked player. He was ranked 4,129th, the lowest ever to win on the tour. He had been in 3 other tour events and missed the cut, I believe, in all of them. So, hey, probably going to get offered about $200 million by Liv now. We'll see.
Got incoming. Yeah. Check your bank account. There's a little bit of wheel grease, and that's going to go on there to try and get you started and see what good friends we could all be there. So congratulations to everyone there at GoJo and Golic on Twitter. If you think we missed anybody for the all weekend team, coming up next, let's address the shot heard around the world in one particular basketball game this weekend that came after the final buzzer sounded. All right, this is the kind of big J journalism stuff you've come to expect from us here at GoJo and Golic, but we've got an update on the bowling ball situation from the Bills Mafia tailgate. If you weren't with us listening earlier, Jason Kelce was out in the parking lot with Bills Mafia, and there's been video you've probably seen before of people doing a shot out of a bowling ball at the Bills Mafia tailgates. And so Jason Kelce, man of the people, went down there and decided to do a shooter with the Bills fans before his brother played them in that game. And we got the question asked last night by Jess Smetana on the live stream we did about, would you do the shot out of a bowling ball that's likely had other people's fingers jammed in it, is probably in regular use? Dad, you agreed, you thought it was a multi-use bowling ball here.
Yep.
We got a DM. So this is at BillsFan2782 on Twitter, named Aaron, who DM'd me and said, as a bowling ball correspondent for you, having taken a shot from this same bowling ball as Jason Kelce, they do give it a quick rinse, and it is specifically for the shots that to be taken from. However, after the shot, you're required to drop it in the ground as a celebration, so it does have some exposure to dirt down there. So, Aaron, thank you for giving us the inside scoop on that. Jesse and I correct in that this bowling ball is just for shooting shots, and they do keep it clean. Like, Bills Mafia is out there. They seem like a lawless bunch, but I'd have to imagine there's still a code you live by there, and this is part of that.
I guess they do seem like a lawless bunch. And by the way, I love it. I would love to be out there and partying with them and doing shots at that bowling ball. I just didn't expect that. I'm not going to lie, Jesse. I didn't expect them to say, okay, we're cleaning the ball after each shot. I mean, because let's be honest, everybody around there is probably hammered, and we're going to take time and stop and think about cleaning that ball before the next shot. I mean, I don't know how much I believe that.
Apparently that's what they're doing. Apparently the bowling ball is sitting in someone's garage, someone's house or whatever, just waiting every week to be taken to the tailgates. So it's good to know. Now we know, the more you know. You know?
The thing I still want to know is whatever happened, because Peppa Pig was at this game, the mascot from the children's show. Anyone who's missed it, there was a Paramount Plus ad that featured a lot of the different properties on their app, one of which is Peppa Pig episodes, and had Peppa with Josh Allen interacting. So it's kind of become this like cult thing for the Bills fans. I saw a bunch of plastic Peppa Pigs in the crowd, but they brought the mascot there. And in a day and age post Pop-Tart Bowl where we're eating mascots, I was a little worried, one, that they might get her up on the barbecue, or that she was the sacrifice for the pit. We still haven't heard the rumors going around that the pit where the Bills are building their new stadium had been the subject of some ritual sacrifice among fans during the Bills' winning streak. And I was a little bit worried that Peppa would meet the criteria on a number of fronts to be sacrificed and then eaten based on how we're getting down with mascots lately. So I hope Peppa made it out okay.
Yeah. I could have seen that about Peppa. You're right. We're going down. We may be going down a slippery slope with the mascots.
It could get dark very quickly, so we need to all be on our toes here. A lot of action surrounding the Bills game this weekend, but Jesse, we also had a lot of action in college basketball, and an interesting moment for a star player that's, I think, going to prompt a discussion about what court storming looks like in the future.
Yeah, Caitlin Clark had a rough one over the weekend. She's okay, but she did collide with a fan who knocked her to the court, left her reeling in pain after the Buckeyes upset Iowa. So, you know, the fans are storming the court. Everybody's excited. Iowa players had not yet cleared the court and left for the locker room. And Caitlin Clark gets clipped here, goes down. She was okay. She talked about it in the presser afterwards. She said she kind of like got the wind knocked out of her. Kind of wild to me watching the video though, guys, because there's like, it's not like there's like a huge crowd and she's like either of them is trying to avoid each other. Like, because everybody's fine, I feel like I can say it's just kind of wild to look at the bird's eye view of it. It's like, how'd you guys run into each other? There's no one else around. And you managed to hit each other?
You know what's the culprit of all this is? The cell phone. Like, I've seen plenty of this on campus. When I was in college, I saw a student at Notre Dame on a bike hit a student that was walking because both of them were looking down at their phones at the time. And you can clearly see the Ohio State student that's running down has his phone in selfie mode and is videotaping while they're running onto the court. And so no one involved is paying enough attention. And Dad, this is one of those situations where thankfully it wasn't anything malicious. Thankfully, Caitlin Clark's okay. She said, I just got the wind knocked out of me. I got rocked a little bit in that spot there. But she said, she's like, I I have no problem with court storming. Good for Ohio State. They deserve it after the win where, Caitlin Clark poured up 45 points in a losing effort in that one. But it is a reminder, Dad, I'm generally pro court storming as an idea. Like, I like the idea of celebrating. I don't like to, people that police that and say certain teams shouldn't be celebrating based on where they're ranked or not. It's college kids, and you want that joy, but it was always predicated on there needs to always be the protection of the players in mind. And that's not to say that, again, that this is malicious, but you're understanding that the court has now been compromised, and so the security team's job should always be, especially to make sure the opposing team gets out there without incident. And so I do wonder if situations like this happen with more frequency, if all of a sudden you're going to see court storming treated differently, because it's still a player safety issue at the end of the day, even if it wasn't intentional.
Well, we already see it in the SEC. Don't they fine the football programs $100,000 for storming the field?
Yeah.
I mean, they started doing, and I'm with you. I'm all for storming the field. And I don't want to hear, oh, you're too good to be storming the field. These are college kids, man. Enjoy it. Storm the field, storm the court. I get it. And I agree with Jesse here. When you think of storming the court or the field, you think of mass hysteria. I mean, there was nobody anywhere around these two. It was just an unfortunate collision. It wasn't like she was trying to weave through a ton of people and got knocked down. It just kind of a weird situation.
They were like magnets.
Exactly. I hope they can continue to keep doing it, but I get it. On the other side, you got to have the safety of the players, top of mind. So I don't know what the answer is. I mean, on one side, it's fine the school if they storm the court or storm the field like they do in the SEC. But I don't know where the happy medium is here, Mike, because I don't want to see, college students not be able to do that, to pull off an upset and storm the court and enjoy that moment. But you got to keep the players safe as well.
Yeah, and this would be a totally different conversation if this had been a player seeking out contact. Like we've seen, not contact, but we've seen in recent court stormings or field stormings. There was a player when Caleb Williams, I think it might have been actually a Notre Dame student, when they stormed the field after beating USC, went up and was like making gestures at Caleb Williams after, which is lame. Like going and trying to poke the people that actually were out there playing is a good recipe to get your ass kicked if you're not too careful. This is a situation that seems accidental. Because of that, because everyone's okay, I really want to see the selfie video that it looks like. I think it's a young woman that got collided with there. Yeah. I want to see the first person account of this now. Like, I feel like that TikTok is going to do numbers.
Yeah, I would love to see that. I would love to get that first person view of what went down. It truly is wild, though. Senior, you're right. They were like magnets. They just...
Yeah.
How did you run into each other?
How did you? Because we've seen a lot worse situations, right, where it's just such a melee out there and you don't know how. And that's my fear more than this happening is when students, and let's be honest, a lot of them are hammered by the time they're running onto the court. I'm talking in football a lot as well. And when they go and they get in the face of the opponent. I mean, that could lead to some trouble as well, because you have one side, the losing players who are frustrated and ticked off, on the other side, some, drunk students coming and maybe getting in their grill, or even if they're not drunk, getting in their grill and talking a little smack, how that could end poorly. This was just an unfortunate situation. Gene Smith, the AD for Ohio State, apologized to Iowa and Caitlin Clark for it happening. But I don't know what the answer is, Mike, outside of just banning that, and I don't want to see that banned.
Yeah, I don't think we'll get to that point. It's a star player, and so it's going to get talked about more. We see how this happens all the time, where when something happens to a high-profile player, we're always going to consider it a little bit more because of the attention that's obviously paid to Caitlin Clark because of her ability. But it's always a reminder, too, that the security team is really important in those instances of trying to make sure, hey, we got a plan for how we are going to get the opposing team, especially off the court, who's not going to be celebrating with their home crowd and doing anything like that. And so, thankfully, like we said, the bottom line with this is Caitlin Clark is going to be okay. We don't expect this to affect any more of her season, which is great for us because she is a gift when she is on the court, and especially when she is upright and not dealing with any of this stuff. So congratulations to Ohio State. They did get a big-time win in that moment. 18th ranked Ohio State pulled that off, and they get a court-storming one now. And again, release the video. For the love of God, release the video. Whew, all right, time to finish off the show the way we always do. This, that, and the third. 3 quick stories to send you into the rest of your day. As always, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review us, leave us a 5-star rating, and check us out here, if you can, live Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern on DraftKingsNetwork.com, the YouTube channel, Samsung TV Plus, Roku, bunch of great spots there for all that good stuff. But if you miss any of it and you need to check it out, you can also get us wherever you get your podcast, as well as right here on YouTube as soon as the show is done. Again, thank you to everybody who checked out our live stream last night of the AFC game between the Bills and the Chiefs. We appreciate that. We're going to try and do more stuff like that soon. Thank you to everybody who took part in that as well, all our friends from the media who gave us a little bit of time there. Let's get to this, that, and the third, guys. And start off with this, Dad. This was I kind of a day where a lot of the internet got to sort of be nostalgic because of some unfortunate news that we saw surrounding Sports Illustrated and the layoffs that went on at that company there. The Arena Group, which currently publishes SI, recently missed a $3.75 million payment to their license holder. It sounds like they're still going to be the ones operating it going forward, but it's cost a lot of people their jobs, and there's really been a slow teardown of that once great brand, Dad, that for me as a sports fan, there aren't a lot of sports media things I'm super nostalgic about. You know, I didn't grow up like Stu Gott's a big fan of sports talk radio, and I didn't have as many announcers that I grew up as a diehard fan of, but I remember reading the back page article that Rick Riley used to write in Sports Illustrated for years. I remember I thought the pinnacle of sport was not just when your team won a national championship, but when you got the commemorative hardcover edition of Sports Illustrated that was done for your team, that I used to see the advertisements for late at night on TV with the number that you'd call in to order it. So seeing what's happened here, obviously you feel for the people that have lost their jobs, but also it just sucks seeing what Sports Illustrated's become after what it used to be for so long.
I walked by when I was in San Francisco doing the game, and I was in the stadium up in the press box. They had a huge wall of big moments in the 49ers era, and they were all commemorated on the Sports Illustrated covers. It was all Sports Illustrated covers over the years, and I took a picture of it and got a little nostalgic. There were two things that I love the articles in there, obviously, the whole magazine, but Faces in the Crowd in the beginning of the magazine and Life of Riley, Rick Riley's article on the back page. Those were the two things that I loved in that magazine. And then obviously what was made out of the swimsuit edition every year when that ended up in people's mailbox and how popular that was. But yes, such a tradition with that magazine. And we know print papers and magazines have all kind of a bit gone by the wayside some. And it's a shame, because that, for our world of being in the sports world, what Sports Illustrated was, meant so much to just sit down and read that. Something that's just not done a lot anymore. It's such a kind of a lost art of getting that really good magazine that you like and just sitting down and reading it like a good newspaper at times.
And so many quality writers that came through there, like you mentioned. But you're right, the covers, I think, for so many people were the timestamps for these big moments in the history of sport that you got to look at for so long. And so unfortunate to see, but such an important part of the history of the way sports have been covered for most of our lifetimes here. Jesse, let's get to a big moment that happened over this weekend, though, in sports, in the NHL, where a former the baby got over on former babysitter in this situation.
Yeah, so Brendan Brisson scored his first career goal against the Penguins on Saturday night in the Golden Knights' 3-2 win. And get this, it was against his former babysitter, okay? Is that Sidney Crosby used to babysit this kid, okay? So he's the son of Pat Brisson, who is an agent. He represented Sidney Crosby, numerous other stars throughout the league. And Crosby used to babysit him as a kid. My mind, this makes me feel, this isn't about me, and it makes me feel so old. Like, can you even imagine?
I can't imagine what it's like for Sidney Crosby, who's a guy that, because I think he's so generally facial hair repellent, he looks a lot younger than he is, but has been in the league forever, has been one of the faces of this league for a long time. But I'd have to imagine for him, this is like what we see happen to LeBron James all the time now, where guys will come up to him before the game and be like, one of your first games ever was against my dad, and remind him of his impending basketball mortality. This had to be one of those moments where Sidney Crosby looks around and goes, maybe I need to be done with this soon.
The realization moment, it's so cool to think he's still playing when guys this young are playing, that's the one positive side to look at, is how good you are to still be able to be on your skates doing what you're doing. But yes, then the realization of, I mean, I get those every now and then, like I'm on the field before the game, and Sam Darnold comes up to me, and he said, "Hey, Mr. Golic, how you doing? Just want to let you know I listened to your show all the time when I was growing up." And I'm just like, I got these guys calling me Mr. Golic, yeah. and talking about how when they were kids listening, way back in the day, with Mike and Mike, it's kind of a, oh, hey, that's cool, but wow, am I old, So Sidney Crosby had to be going, I can't believe this guy that I was babysitting is now out here scoring goals. Just absolutely incredible.
What I want to know, too, is, like, how babysitting was this? Like, because at that point, Sidney Crosby was already pretty knee-deep in the game, and so, like, was he actually the one over there, or was it just, hey, they would hang out and babysit is the easy term? Because, like, did Sidney Crosby ever have to, like, change a diaper here? The kid looked like he was a little bit older than that, but I want to know how much he had to actually do hands-on in this.
Yeah, this seemed like more of a, like, come over to the house and hang out thing.
Yeah, I would agree. But the babysit connotation takes on kind of a different note of parents are going out for the evening. Yeah. You're the only one home with the kid watching them, taking care of them. I don't know if it was ever that. I honestly do not know.
I don't think so.
I just love the thought of him having to play against a kid whose butt he's wiped at some point. That would actually be the moment.
Oh, see, we don't know we did that. No, what? Come on.
It's possible.
I'm saying the kid looked like he was probably past that at that point, but you never know. And again, to me, that's an important part of the story here, and part that would be very, very weird for Sidney Crosby there. Not as weird as this potentially is right now. Let's get to the third, because this could be the start of a much larger story, or I should say much smaller story based on the visuals here.
Okay, so the visual is this. Vince Wilfork went skiing, and the video that we have, first of all, an amazing edit that we got from him here. He captioned this video saying, "Never in a million years I would think I'd be on a mountain skiing. What an unbelievable experience. And yes, a 300-pounder on them little skis going down a mountain, LOL. I loved it and will be spending more time in the mountains. Big thank you for introducing something new that I love into my life. BTW, that last hill was too big. Y'all finish the rest. LOL. #Aspen." So this occurred in Aspen. Vince Wilfork doing his thing, man. Going down, skiing. He said it's like a new thing. So I'm guessing he's never done it before. And he's going to be spending more time in the mountains in the future going forward.
So Vince Wilfork doing incredibly athletic things at his size, not anything new. He's one of the great athletes of our time, and we've always talked about guys in the trenches when you consider the weight that they're doing this at. And Vince Wilfork was listed at 325 during his playing career. There is no way, to quote my dad, on God's green earth, that Vince Wilfork, when we saw him in the latter stages of his career wearing overalls on Hard Knocks, was 325 pounds. That being said, Dad, he doesn't look 325 in this picture either. He looks pretty slim. Now, it's ski clothes, it's from an angle, but we got to keep our eye on Vince. We might be getting ready for a weight loss reveal.
Well, he says a 300-pounder. He does not look 300 pounds at all. Let me tell you one of the more amazing things to me, though. This man, who's better known for being seen in overalls with no shirt on, right? That's the visual I have of him when he would make the rounds doing that. That was kind of what his look was known as. He played 13 or 14 years in the league as a nose tackle, which means you are getting hit from every angle possible. How beat up you have to be, and this man is out there skiing. I mean, man, I wouldn't even think about putting some skis on and going down a hill. Good for him. And you're right, I can't wait till we get some kind of reveal on what he looks like. Well done, Vince.
We're not sure, but we got our eye on you, Vince. His Instagram doesn't have a lot of front-facing pictures, doesn't have a lot of stuff that would reveal otherwise. So I don't know if Vince is in the lab right now or if he's just enjoying his time on the mountain. Either way, we hope you enjoyed this show as much as Vince Wilfork enjoyed skiing. If you did, make sure you download, subscribe, rate, review it. Leave us a 5-star rating. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.